The Grand Concord station stretched across the void like a crown of silver and glass, orbiting a star that had witnessed more empires rise and fall than humans had recorded years. Aliens from dozens of systems passed through its halls, their eyes flicking over humans as though they were an amusing novelty. Captain Elias Rowan, a human envoy from Earth, moved with quiet confidence through the corridors. Behind him, the delegation followed in neat formation, but it was not their ranks or credentials that drew the attention of the alien onlookers. It was the small woman beside him. Myra Hale walked silently, a simple black tunic contrasting with the bright, ceremonial robes of the aliens around them. She carried her data tablets with careful precision, spoke only when addressed, and made no effort to impress anyone. Her quiet presence led many alien delegates to believe she was just an assistant. Her small frame, the subtle gestures of deference she used, and the way she followed behind Elias made them certain of it. To them, she was invisible, a mere shadow in the grand spectacle of diplomacy. Elias, however, treated her differently. He did not allow her to trail far behind or stay hidden. Whenever a delegate passed too close, he subtly moved to place himself between them and Myra. When speaking to others, he included her insights, asking her to verify facts or note details, even when she barely opened her mouth. The aliens whispered among themselves, confused by this human behavior. Why would a leader give such attention to someone so unassuming? They assumed he was naive, perhaps even weak. The delegation entered the Grand Hall, a structure of spiraling crystal columns and hovering platforms, its ceiling disappearing into shadows where distant stars glimmered. Alien diplomats had already begun their assessments. Tall, tentacled beings with translucent skin regarded humans with disdain. Quadrupedal generals, their armor clinking, stared at Elias and Myra with thinly veiled suspicion. Every gesture of humanity was scrutinized, every subtle act of respect catalogued and misinterpreted. Myra moved carefully, her eyes scanning the crowd. Nothing escaped her notice. She noted who spoke with authority and who merely pretended to. She recorded inconsistencies in alien etiquette and identified patterns in their subtle threats. Each observation was quiet, almost imperceptible, but she shared them with Elias in the briefest of whispers or written notes. Elias nodded, his trust in her complete. To the humans, Myra was more than an assistant. She was a strategist, a guide, and an equal partner in this journey. To the aliens, she was nothing. Negotiations began with the formalities customary to the Grand Concord. Aliens spoke in measured tones, their voices resonating unnaturally, filled with centuries of tradition. They tested Elias immediately, presenting proposals that assumed humanity's inferiority. They expected hesitation, missteps, and submission. Myra observed, noticing how quickly humans adapted to cultural nuances. When an alien representative subtly insulted Elias, suggesting he was inexperienced, Myra leaned forward and quietly adjusted the wording of a response. The correction was so slight, so perfectly timed, that no one but Elias noticed, yet it kept the conversation from spiraling into offense. Hours passed. The aliens continued their tests, pushing boundaries, raising stakes. Delegates introduced misinformation about neighboring systems, hoping humans would overreact. Myra quietly flagged errors in their data and suggested corrections. Each correction was minor in appearance but critical in effect. Every time Elias used one of Myra's insights, the aliens' surprise deepened. They began to suspect humans might be clever, but they still underestimated Myra, convinced she was merely a careful assistant rather than the source of the brilliance they observed. At one point, an alien delegate, a four-armed creature with eyes that glowed faintly blue, approached Elias with a proposal that seemed fair at first glance. Its words hit a trap, a subtle legal clause that would strip humanity of critical mining rights on a distant planet. Elias listened, nodding, his expression neutral. Myra tilted her head, reading the complex contract with meticulous care. Within moments, she pointed out a tiny phrase that changed the meaning entirely, one overlooked by the alien and even by other human advisors. Elias smiled faintly, thanked her, and made a slight amendment in their response. The aliens murmured among themselves. How could a human spot such a hidden detail so quickly? And why did Elias seem so confident in someone they considered inconsequential? The tension in the room grew, though the humans remained calm. Myra's quiet efficiency and Elias' unwavering support created a subtle, unshakable human presence that even the most arrogant alien could not dismiss. Despite the high stakes, Myra remained composed. She did not dominate discussions or demand attention. Instead, she observed and advised. She calculated outcomes of every negotiation, predicting potential conflicts before they happened. When disputes erupted among the alien delegates, she guided Elias with a few words, suggesting compromises that prevented escalation. To the humans, she was invaluable. To the aliens, she was invisible, an error in judgment that would soon cost them dearly. During a brief pause, the delegation moved to a smaller chamber for data review. Myra set her tablets down and activated a holographic map of nearby star systems. Lines of travel routes, trade networks, and political boundaries shimmered in the air. She gestured subtly, and Elias followed her suggestions, planning future moves that ensured humanity would not be cornered in any negotiation. The room, once tense with alien scrutiny, seemed to shrink around them, but Myra and Elias operated in a bubble of quiet confidence. One of the alien delegates, a reptilian diplomat with scales reflecting the station's lights, tried to dismiss Myra's input in a sharp, derisive tone. Elias raised a hand. "She has been reviewing these systems longer than anyone here," he said evenly. "Her observations are not suggestions, they are informed analysis." Myra did not speak, but the way she met the delegate's gaze carried weight. There was no anger, no threat, only the quiet assurance of knowledge. The alien flinched, surprised by the subtle power in her stillness. As the day progressed, it became clear that the aliens' strategy of underestimation was failing. Every slight against Myra, every attempt to ignore her input, was met with human restraint paired with undeniable competence. She corrected historical inaccuracies, noticed inconsistencies in behavior, and predicted potential betrayals with uncanny precision. Yet she remained humble. She did not seek credit. She only acted when necessary, her authority derived not from titles but from capability. By evening, negotiations had reached a tense stalemate. The aliens were wary but confused. They could not determine if they were facing simple humans or a carefully coordinated force of intellect and insight. Elias and Myra retreated to a private chamber where they reviewed notes and prepared for the next day. Myra spoke for the first time in hours, her voice calm and precise. "The Council underestimates us because they do not understand our values. They equate visibility with importance. We operate differently." Myra was not just his assistant. She was humanity's shield, the mind behind every potential move, the quiet force that would ensure humans were never dismissed. That night, Myra stayed late in the chamber, reviewing data feeds from the station. She observed minor movements among alien factions, noting alliances, rivalries, and potential threats. Every pattern was a puzzle she pieced together, preparing humanity for the battles of diplomacy that lay ahead. No one noticed her diligence, and that was exactly as she intended. Humans valued competence and trust over ceremony and spectacle. She carried the weight of strategy not because she sought power, but because she was trusted to do so. By the time the first lights of the next cycle illuminated the station, Myra had already predicted a series of challenges the aliens would present. She had crafted responses, preempted possible attacks on human negotiation points, and mapped alternative trade and diplomatic routes. Elias entered the chamber, glancing at her work. He smiled faintly, a quiet acknowledgement of her unseen mastery. When the delegation returned to the council hall, the aliens were ready to resume talks. They had prepared to test humanity further, to exploit what they believed was a weakness. But humans now entered the room with subtle confidence, guided by the quiet intelligence of someone they had chosen to underestimate. Myra's presence, so understated yet undeniably critical, set a new tone. Even the most arrogant aliens sensed it, though none could articulate what had changed. As discussions began again, an alien delegate tried to corner Elias with a complex, multi-layered treaty. Myra's eyes flicked over the document, catching a flaw before any human or alien had noticed it. She handed a note to Elias, who made a small, almost invisible adjustment in his response. The aliens' confidence faltered, their surprise hidden behind a mask of neutrality. Every misjudged assumption by the aliens reinforced a growing realization: humans did not operate like other species. They valued intellect, loyalty, and quiet authority over displays of grandeur. By the end of the day, the aliens' whispering had changed. They began to discuss Myra, not openly, not with respect, but with a dawning awareness that she was more than an assistant. She had not yet revealed the full extent of her abilities, but the seeds of realization had been planted. The delegation returned to their quarters, and Myra finally allowed herself a brief moment of rest. She knew the coming days would bring challenges, but she was ready. In the silent corridors of Grand Concord Station, as the stars glimmered outside, one truth remained clear. Humans did not need crowns to command respect. And those who were treated as royalty by humans, quiet, unassuming, and brilliant, were far more powerful than any alien could imagine. The next day dawned over the Grand Concord Station, painting the glass domes and metal walkways with a soft glow. The stars outside were distant and cold, indifferent to the politics unfolding within. Ilyas Rowan led his delegation back into the council hall, his posture calm and deliberate. Myra Hale followed, her presence quiet but commanding in its subtlety. To most of the aliens, she remained a simple assistant. To Ilyas, she was the mind of humanity in the room. The session began with formal greetings, but tension lingered like an unspoken warning. Alien delegates, now somewhat wary, tested humanity's patience in small ways. They attempted to misquote treaties, introduce false records, and bait humans with offers that seemed generous but were laden with hidden clauses. Each test was designed to provoke hesitation, to expose weakness. Myra observed everything with an analytical calm that few could match. Her eyes flicked over data feeds, gestures, and minor facial twitches that revealed intention. An alien representative, a towering creature with segmented armor plating and glowing eyes, attempted a subtle insult. "Humans are simple," it said, its voice vibrating with contempt. "They rely on companions for guidance. They cannot think beyond the surface of things." The hall fell silent for a moment, expecting Ilyas to respond defensively. He did not. Instead, he looked at Myra and she met his gaze briefly, her eyes steady. Ilyas spoke calmly. "We value collaboration. We recognize that every perspective has weight. What seems simple is often the result of careful thought." The alien's mouth opened, intending to reply, but no words came. Something about the precision in Ilyas' tone and the quiet confidence in Myra's presence made confrontation seem ill-advised. During the first formal negotiation segment, aliens presented trade agreements regarding resource allocations on newly discovered planets. Hidden within their tables were clauses designed to favor alien factions while restricting human expansion. Myra reviewed the contracts quietly, her fingers hovering over the glowing data tablets. Every clause, every conditional term, every loophole became clear to her almost instantly. She made a subtle notation and passed a small, folded tablet to Ilyas. Ilyas smiled faintly as he read it. "You are always one step ahead," he murmured, his voice barely audible. He adjusted the phrasing in his verbal response, and the alien delegate, unaware of the correction, nodded in agreement. The humans had avoided a potential trap without the aliens realizing they had been outmaneuvered. The council session stretched on, the hours blending together, but Myra remained focused. She detected subtle alliances forming among the aliens, noting who deferred to whom, who whispered behind closed communication channels, and who was likely to betray their own faction. When minor arguments erupted over historical territorial claims, Myra quietly advised Ilyas on when to speak, when to remain silent, and when to subtly shift the discussion. Her timing was flawless. Midway through the session, a minor emergency shook the hall. One of the alien delegates suddenly collapsed, seemingly overcome by a physiological reaction unknown to humans. Panic spread through the hall. Delegates shouted, some backing away, others attempting to cover the incident with procedural formalities. Ilyas remained calm, glancing at Myra. She stood immediately, moving through the crowd with precise steps, assessing the situation. She instructed human medics with clear commands, while guiding alien attendants in ways that did not insult their pride. Her directions were followed instinctively. Even the alien delegates deferred, realizing that interference might worsen the situation. Within moments, the delegates' condition stabilized. No one thanked her openly, aliens seldom did, but every pair of eyes now carried a fraction of the understanding that she was not an ordinary assistant. Afterward, negotiations resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted subtly. Aliens whispered among themselves, exchanging nervous glances. They began to question whether underestimating humans had been a mistake. Myra continued to work quietly, identifying weaknesses in alien proposals, suggesting alternative phrasing, and ensuring that no advantage was taken from humanity. Every action was measured, deliberate, and effective. In the afternoon, the aliens attempted a more direct challenge. A group of delegates cornered Ilyas with an intricate treaty designed to force humans into diplomatic concessions. They assumed that he would falter without immediate guidance. Elias listened, keeping his tone neutral, and waited for Myra. She reviewed the document in silence, noting a series of interconnected clauses that could lead to a cascade of disadvantages if overlooked. With a small gesture, she highlighted the critical points to Elias. Elias acted swiftly but discreetly, rephrasing certain commitments and requesting clarifications in ways that appeared casual but were strategically sound. The alien delegates, expecting human error, found themselves trapped by their own overconfidence. They had presented a test, intending to humiliate or manipulate, and yet humanity had avoided it with grace. Later, during a brief recess, Myra and Elias walked together along a narrow observation corridor overlooking the central hub of the station. Stars glimmered beyond the transparent walls, casting pale light across their features. Myra spoke softly, almost as if to herself. They think they can control what they do not understand. They measure authority with appearances, not capability. Myra's brilliance, quiet as it was, represented something that aliens could not measure: trust, loyalty, and the human ability to elevate those who carried the heaviest burdens. When talks resumed, the aliens grew bolder. They introduced misinformation about neighboring systems, claiming that humans had violated certain interstellar agreements. Delegates expected confrontation, hesitation, or confusion. Myra, however, was ready. She cross-referenced historical records, intercepted communication logs, and minute observations from the past cycles of the station. Within moments, she identified discrepancies and prepared a precise rebuttal. Elias delivered the human response, carefully calibrated to correct the errors without provoking hostility. The alien delegates were momentarily speechless. Their plan to discredit humanity had failed. Whispers spread throughout the chamber, a mixture of curiosity and unease. The humans had not only avoided manipulation, they had controlled the narrative with subtlety and intelligence. As evening approached, tensions rose further. One alien faction attempted a coordinated display of force, sending small drones across the chamber as a demonstration of technological superiority. They assumed that humans would panic or overreact. Myra observed the drones, flight patterns, their speeds, and energy signatures. She instructed security to remain calm while subtly adjusting shields and countermeasures. The drones were neutralized with precision, no alarms triggered, and no damage occurred. The aliens had intended to intimidate humanity. Instead, they were silently outmaneuvered. By the time the council adjourned for the day, the aliens had begun to recognize a disturbing truth. The woman they had dismissed as a mere assistant was no ordinary human. She predicted outcomes, managed crises, and guided decisions with a level of mastery they could not comprehend. Yet she did not boast or demand recognition. Her authority was quiet, natural, and undeniable. In their private quarters, Elias addressed the delegation. "Myra has guided every major decision today," he said, voice calm but firm. "We do not need to dominate with force or ceremony. We need wisdom, patience, and trust. That is how humans survive among the stars." Delegates nodded, some in disbelief, some in quiet admiration. Myra spoke then, softly, directing attention to a holographic display of trade routes and interstellar alliances. "We must anticipate their moves, not just respond to them. They assume we are predictable because they do not understand us. We are not predictable, we are adaptive." Her words carried weight, measured and deliberate. Humans around her understood. Aliens outside, if they listened closely, could sense it too. The night deepened and the station became quiet. Myra remained at her station, reviewing every action, every negotiation, every subtle interaction of the day. She calculated probabilities of future crises, potential betrayals, and opportunities for advantage that did not rely on aggression. She worked in silence, unseen and unacknowledged, yet indispensable. Elias joined her later, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They still underestimate you," he said, a hint of a smile in his voice. "And that will be their mistake." Myra nodded, her expression serene. The truth was simple. Humans did not operate by appearances or hierarchy alone. They elevated those they trusted, those who carried the weight of responsibility, and in doing so, they created a force that no alien protocol could dismiss. As the station lights dimmed and the stars outside blazed coldly, Myra's quiet vigilance remained unbroken. The aliens had tested humanity. They had underestimated a simple assistant. They had been wrong. And the human race, guided by intellect, trust, and quiet courage, was far from finished. By the end of this second day, whispers among the alien delegates had shifted. The woman they had dismissed as inconsequential was now recognized as a force they could not ignore, yet they did not fully understand her. She had not revealed her full capability. She had only begun. The humans left the council hall that night with calm determination. Myra had ensured their safety, their strategy, and their dignity. The aliens had been challenged in ways they did not yet comprehend. And the galaxy, vast and indifferent, would soon learn that humans did not bend easily. Those they treated as lowly assistants might be the most dangerous, capable, and respected individuals of all. The morning light in Grand Concord Station cast long shadows across the council hall, but the atmosphere felt charged, different from the previous days. Alien delegates entered with cautious steps, glancing at humans with measured attention. They had begun to understand, at least partially, that something about this delegation was unusual, something they had ignored for too long. Captain Elias Rowan led his team through the hall, Myra Hale walking beside him as always. Her calm presence seemed to draw attention without effort, though she said little. The delegates who had dismissed her as an assistant now studied her silently. They noticed how she carried herself, the precision of her movements, and the way even Elias deferred to her subtly in conversation. Still, they underestimated her completely. The day's agenda was ambitious. The aliens had prepared a series of tests, complex negotiations, public debates, and hypothetical scenarios designed to expose human limitations. They expected hesitation, misjudgment, or panic. They did not expect what happened next. The first challenge involved the distribution of critical resources on a contested planet. Multiple alien factions claimed rights, and humans were to act as neutral mediators. As the discussion began, one delegate tried to manipulate the language of the treaty, embedding clauses that would favor its faction. Myra noticed the subtle patterns instantly. The clause could give one faction control of the entire mineral output without proper accountability. She leaned forward slightly, passing a small note to Elias. He read it carefully and then spoke, correcting the imbalance with calm authority. The aliens were momentarily stunned. They had expected uncertainty and error, but humanity had acted with precision, foresight, and fairness. Whispers spread quietly among them. The assistant had prevented a disaster they had assumed would go unnoticed. The second test came in the form of a strategic simulation. The aliens projected a holographic map of neighboring systems and simulated a potential military conflict. Delegates assumed humans would struggle to respond quickly enough to complex multi-faction warfare. Myra studied the map, noting troop movements, supply lines, and potential alliances. "Elias," she said quietly, "if we redirect our position to Sector 6 and propose a temporary alliance with the Raiden faction, we can stabilize the area and maintain neutrality without confrontation." How had a single human, dismissed as an assistant, anticipated multiple outcomes and proposed a flawless solution instantly? By midday, the tension in the council hall had escalated. Alien factions conferred privately, exchanging urgent signals. They had underestimated humanity's approach, particularly Myra's insight. She remained composed, observing not only the negotiations but also the subtle psychological dynamics at play. Every whisper, every glance, every gesture mattered. She calculated consequences before any alien could act. The next challenge was direct confrontation. A powerful alien diplomat approached Elias aggressively, attempting to intimidate him verbally and disrupt human cohesion. He demanded immediate concessions, mocking the humans' perceived naivety. Myra did not intervene directly. Instead, she passed subtle signals to Elias, a slight shift in stance, a pause in speech, an unassuming question that revealed hidden inconsistencies in the alien's argument. Elias followed her guidance perfectly. With calm words and steady demeanor, he highlighted the flaws without anger or accusation. The alien delegates stumbled, frustrated, unable to maintain dominance. Other delegates looked on, realizing that the humans were far more sophisticated than appearances suggested. Myra had once again turned the tide silently, without confrontation or display of power. The final and most dangerous challenge came unexpectedly. One alien faction attempted a coordinated act of sabotage. A small device intended to disrupt human communication systems was smuggled into the council chamber. Delegates assumed humans would panic, but Myra noticed irregular energy readings on the station's sensors. She immediately identified the device and instructed security to neutralize it without drawing attention. The operation was flawless. No alarms, no chaos, no casualties. The aliens, unaware that the attempt had been foiled before it began, assumed humans had simply endured the challenge. But those who observed closely began to see the pattern. The humans did not react, they anticipated. The assistant had not only preserved safety, but also turned potential disaster into an advantage, demonstrating foresight beyond any alien calculation. After the sabotage was neutralized, a hush fell over the council hall. Delegates whispered, exchanged glances, and adjusted their positions. A realization was forming slowly but unmistakably. Humans had not been merely lucky or skilled, they were different in ways that could not be ignored. Myra Hale, the quiet woman they had dismissed, was the architect of this difference. She was not an assistant. She was a strategist, a guardian, and a leader. During a break, Elias addressed the human delegation privately. "The aliens are beginning to understand," he said. "They are starting to see you, Myra, not as an assistant, but as what you truly are. That is our strength." When the ritual concluded, the humans had not only performed flawlessly, they had subtly altered the outcome to highlight fairness and mutual respect. The aliens, once confident in their superiority, now approached humanity with caution and curiosity. Toward evening, the Grand Concord Station's council hall grew quiet. Delegates conferred privately, no longer attempting subtle tests or provocations. The humans, guided by Myra, had demonstrated competence, foresight, and integrity in ways the aliens could not ignore. Elias observed quietly, a sense of pride and relief in his demeanor. Myra, still composed, reviewed her notes and considered future moves. The day had been long, but humanity's position was now secure. Later, in a private chamber, Myra and Elias reflected on the events. "They will not underestimate us again," Elias said. "They may fear the idea, but respect will follow. Tomorrow, they will see the full extent." Those they treated with respect, the ones carrying the heaviest burdens, were the most powerful regardless of appearance. The next day, the aliens finally sought clarification about Myra's role. They were discreet, cautious, and hesitant, yet they needed to understand. One senior diplomat approached Elias directly. "Who is she?" the delegate asked, voice tinged with curiosity and respect. "We believed her to be an assistant, yet every outcome, every decision, every observation, she influences them all. She is entrusted with decisions that ensure our survival and growth among the stars. She helped negotiate fair agreements, prevent disputes, and ensure that humans were never at a disadvantage." Delegates, once condescending, now listened carefully. The subtle shifts in posture, tone, and language were unmistakable. Humanity had changed the aliens' perception, not through dominance, but through competence and calm authority. By the end of the council sessions, the aliens had formally acknowledged Myra's role. They did not grant her titles or crowns, as humans did not seek such symbols, but they offered gestures of respect reserved for the highest-ranking dignitaries. Myra accepted them with quiet dignity, not pride. She had not sought recognition. She had only ensured that humans were understood and respected. As the delegation prepared to depart the council hall, Elias spoke to Myra privately. "Today, the galaxy began to understand humanity in a new way. They underestimated you, but they will not again. We survive, adapt, and thrive not because of arrogance or power, but because we trust those who carry responsibility and honor them for it." The lesson was simple, yet profound. Humans did not elevate power through titles or displays. They elevated those who were trusted, competent, and willing to bear the burdens of responsibility. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the station, Myra Hale looked out at the void. The galaxy was still vast and full of unknown dangers, but humanity was prepared. Not with fleets or weapons alone, but with minds, trust, and courage. They had shown that even when underestimated, humans could rise, adapt, and command respect without demanding it. And in the quiet reflection of space, one truth shone brighter than any star. Those treated as royalty by humans were not powerful because of rank or title. They were powerful because humans entrusted them with the weight of the world, and those entrusted were never to be underestimated.